A lot of people are mad at college game day. Consider me one of them.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Locked On Pac-12. I'm your host, Spencer McLaughlin. Thank you so much for making this your first listen or your first view of the day, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day, and your number one source to stay up to date with our media rights and soon to be mostly team-free, but until then, beloved and loaded Conference of Champions. Like, comment, subscribe, rate, and review as well. Wherever you listen to or watch the show, please and thank you. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Create an account. Use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Lots to get to, winners and losers today. The coaching carousel is going to be a little bit live, couple jobs that I think Pac-12 fans should be aware of. But we start with a colossal blunder on the part of a show that I have treasured since I was 5 years old. Every Saturday that I have been able to, when I wake up on a Saturday morning in the fall, I watch ESPN's College Game Day. I always have. I always want to. Is getting a lot more difficult to watch a show that is so agenda driven when it comes to these decisions. So Oregon State plays Washington at home next week. Washington is undefeated and ranked number 5 in the country, probably going to remain in that spot, even though they should be inside the top 4 for the college football playoff rankings. Oregon State is number 12. They just ran Stanford off the face of the planet because that's what a good team does at home, which is what Oregon State is, a good team and a great one at home. They're 8-2. It's their best start in 10 years. The Beavs still have the possibility of getting to the Pac-12 championship game. Washington is clearly playing on thin ice in the eyes of the committee to get to the college football playoff. And College Game Day has decided they're going to go to James Madison. I got nothing against James Madison here. In fact, I think they're being absolutely wronged by the NCAA. That whatever their mascot is, see, nobody knows because nobody really cares. ESPN's going to tell you to care, but no one's actually going to care because what's going to happen is that game will get featured heavily on game day and then nobody's going to watch it because, nobody cares right now. James Madison is not going to be able to play in a bowl game this year. It's utterly ridiculous because they just came up from the FCS level. It's stupid. It's a dumb rule. In no way, shape, or form in any logical universe should you ever look at that rule and say that we need to shed light on that and throw them a bone more than we need to highlight what is happening in Corvallis. Because what's the right word here? I'm trying to not use colorful language because this is a G-rated podcast. And as you can tell, I'm pretty fired up about this in a negative way. And it's not the first time that we've seen College Game Day use Oregon State and Washington State as a punching bag or something that they just utterly disregard, disrespect, and overlook. They're out there to tell James Madison's story, one that is worth telling and worth mentioning on College Game Day because that rule needs to be changed. We're in full agreement there. In no universe or any parallel universe that may or may not exist out there, does the plight of James Madison this year compare to what Oregon State and Washington State as well are about to experience? It does not even compare. And I care about this stuff because it affects people, and everybody knows that. It affects a lot of people who care very deeply about the university, about its athletics, about its football team. And ESPN had a chance to do the right thing. And instead, those absolute utter cowards at that network decided to just overlook Oregon State and Washington State, and they're not even going to mention it on game day. You watch that show this week. They are going to talk about whether or not they should be there, highlighting what is far and away the biggest game in college football this weekend. It is not an active slate because the ACC and the SEC, they're having their bye weeks. They're playing bye games. They're playing teams like North Alabama. Let me read you the slate in the top 25. Michigan's playing Maryland, which is basically a bye game. Alabama's playing Chattanooga. Washington has to go to Corvallis to play Oregon State, where the Beavs have lost just once in the last year. Alabama, they're competing for the same spot, by the way, is going to play Chattanooga. Ole Miss is going to play UL Monroe. Wow. What a game. It's just utter insanity. There is no logic to it whatsoever, other than a deliberate and malicious decision on the part of the television network to double down on the landscape that is shifted against Oregon State and Washington State for reasons I cannot quite understand. Washington State is having a bad season at the moment. It looked like it was going to be great. Instead, it has been terrible. Does that mean they deserve to be relegated to a conference that is essentially a glorified Mountain West? Absolutely not. And we can all agree that Oregon State certainly doesn't deserve that. Neither one of them do in any sense of the term. But ESPN has decided that they're going to go fully entrenched in the landscape and not try and tell the story of Corvallis, not try and go to a place where they haven't been since 2010 and talk about what is happening in the sport. Not go to the last Pac-12 game as we know it at Reser Stadium ever, where Washington is playing for its college football playoff hopes, trying to stay undefeated. They haven't gone 11-0 since they last won the national championship as co-champions in 1991. That's the last time they've done that. Oregon State is 8-2. They haven't had a 10-win season since 2006. They did it a year ago. If they win their final two games, or one of them in a bowl game, they could do it again. And highlighting why that program doesn't deserve to go to the Mountain West is in the eyes of ESPN, which hasn't even been the most malicious actor. That's the worst part about it, which I'll get to in just a moment. They have decided that that story isn't worth telling in the same realm as James Madison. Poor old James Madison, you can't make a bowl game. Give me a break. I mean, just utter cowardice from ESPN. Utter cowardice. It is absolutely pathetic. And it frustrates me because I know the platform that show has because I've watched it every Saturday that I've been available to since I was 5 years old. And I have loved that show. And they just keep making these boneheaded decisions that are not acting in the best interests of fans. Now, ESPN as a network, which is, of course, who produces College GameDay, they're not even the ones that you would look at and say were the worst actor or even one of the 5 worst actors in the demise of the Pac-12, which has screwed Oregon State and Washington State. Because Fox is the network that acted more maliciously and, according to reports, coordinated with USC to try to get them into the Big Ten and turn down expansion and yada, yada, yada. We all know the story at this point in time. ESPN's the one that offered a deal last year that would have saved the Pac-10. Including Colorado, at $30 million a school. And instead of ESPN realizing, hey, we aren't the ones that killed this conference here, because they certainly are not. They're going to go run and hide from it. And instead of highlighting what is clearly the best game and giving those fans in Corvallis what they rightfully deserve, because their program has gotten to that point, and their university is currently on the cusp of being relegated in a way that they do not deserve in any way, shape, or form. And ESPN's going to go out there and hide behind James Madison and the Jonas Brothers. That's a laughing stock of a decision. If I ever did something on this show that stupid and that completely ridiculous, my boss would call me and say, hey, we're going to go with a different host on this program. That's what we would do. That's what they do. That is the scale with which they are going here, of their just absolute colossal error and oversight and a slight. And you know it's intentional. You know they didn't want to deal with the blowback of being in Corvallis or the optics of being there, as they were an actor, though not the principal one, in what has led to Oregon State being in the situation they currently find themselves in. Drives me nuts. It drives me absolutely nuts. I have a couple more thoughts on that, if you can believe it. I know, Spencer, how could you possibly have more thoughts? It's easy, I'll tell you. Game time is also really easy because you shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and views from your seat, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. Game Time is the only ticketing app that gives you complete peace of mind with your purchase. That's right. You see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive, and they're obsessed with helping you save money on tickets. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE. That's Locked On College for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Just a bunch of losers, man. I tell you. So here's the other thing that bugs me. Washington is a team that is currently getting overlooked. Because if they're not in the top 4, which I don't suspect they will be after a win over a good Utah team, it's going to prove once again that people are just not respecting West Coast football, which has been, standard operating procedure for quite a long time. Unfortunately, they have a better resume than Florida State. That is objectively true. But they'll probably be number 5 when the rankings get released on Tuesday. We'll see. Which doesn't bode well for the Pac-12, given the amount of chaos that could ensue in the next 3 weeks, final 2 of the regular season, and then a conference championship weekend. But here's the thing. If you're ESPN, what is the downside of going to Corvallis? And also, who's asking for James Madison against Appalachian State? No one's cared about Appalachian State since they beat Michigan in 2007. That was an awesome story. It's one of the greatest upsets in college sports I have ever seen. I think what's happening to James Madison is wrong. I would rather see a James Madison story play out every year where a team that is deserving of playing for a bowl game does not get the opportunity to go because of a dumb NCAA rule. I would rather see that play out to 10 teams every single season for the rest of my life than see what is happening to Oregon State and Washington State happen one time. But ESPN doesn't care. And I've, gotten some messages from Oregon State fans like, we're kind of used to it at this point. Unfortunately, they are. Because the TV networks are telling you, you don't matter. You're not worth it. You're not even worth us showing up to highlight you as the biggest game in college football, which it is. There is no close second here. There are no ramifications in James Madison hosting Appalachian State. Like, you talk about a kick below the belt from ESPN. Not only do you not choose to go to Corvallis in what is really the last realistic opportunity to do so, given the impending relegation Oregon State is about to be facing, but to go to a place and go highlight a game as the game of the week and give those fans an awesome experience that GameDay provides every week and has for the last several decades, to give it to a school that is competing at a level that would not be able to sniff the level that Oregon State is playing at right now, is such an unnecessary, unneeded, and absolutely malicious shot below the belt. That's what it is. And I think that sucks. I think it absolutely sucks. There's no good reason. There are reasons, but there are no good reasons for GameDay to be going to James Madison. And I hope somebody has the gall to ask them a question, to ask those hosts a question. I know that Reese Davis and Kirk Herbstreit and McAfee and Corso and Desmond Howard and everybody else that's part of the GameDay crew, I know they don't necessarily make the decision. I don't know how that process goes out. I would like to hear an answer to the question, why are you not in Corvallis this week? And see what kind of corporate BS they throw out. Because holy crap. You guys ever see Jurassic Park? I hope so. There's a great line in there from Jeff Goldblum. Well, there are about 50 from Jeff Goldblum in that entire series. They pull over to the side of the road. He takes off his glasses, and he's looking at this giant pile of dinosaur manure and goes, man, that is one huge pile of crap. He used a different word. That's the word that I feel is more appropriate in the situation. It is not appropriate given how we operate here at the network, which I fully respect. I think I've talked about this enough now and made my feelings pretty clear. But those absolute cowards didn't want to answer tough questions, didn't want to deal with the bad optics of a big TV network that wouldn't take in Oregon State and Washington State or help them find a conference or work to orchestrate all this stuff behind the scenes, didn't want to at least go out and say, you know what? We're sorry this is happening to you. Here's College Game Day. You deserve it, because guess what? Oregon State does deserve it. They absolutely do. You know what those fans have done for the last 5 years? They've shown up week after week after week after week. They've supported the program. A lot of them have given money to the program. And they have been slow and steady and quiet and methodical in their build into a top 15 football team in the country. And they have an opportunity to get a massive win and keep their hopes of making their first ever Pac-12 championship game alive in their last ever Pac-12 championship game at Reser Stadium against an undefeated Washington team. But that narrative, in the eyes of ESPN, pales in comparison to James Madison. Give me a break. All right, I'm done. Let's get to Pac-12 winners and losers. It's a slightly more optimistic note depending on which fan base you are here. Now, for those of you who are new here, first of all, thank you for tuning into the show. Make sure you like and subscribe. Second of all, every Monday, post-football Saturday/weekend, I come on here and give what I think a fan base should be feeling. You can get one of 5 labels: outright winner, lean win, no vibe, lean lose, and a loser for the week, reflective of how your team performed in comparison to expectations the prior week, taking into account broader ramifications. Let's start with an outright winner of the week. Ooh, the Pac-12 Prime Picks, baby. 4-1. Only 3 games handed out the over in the Cal-Washington State game. That hit about midway through the third quarter. The live over-under got to 76.5 at one point. It went over that too. 42-39 final score. Cal gets the win there, which makes the Bears an outright winner, because the Bears, with 2 games left that are both winnable, have a chance for bowl eligibility. 100%. Good win against Washington State. I know the Cougs aren't playing great football right now, but Cal's got to be able to beat somebody, and they were able to beat the Cougs. And Stanford's up this week. Cal's the better team, and they will play the last week of the regular season, I think, with a chance to go to a bowl game. So that's optimistic for Cal. Standards, different for every program, but that's where Cal is at right now. They just want to make a bowl game. Arizona State, you got the right coach. This is one of those marker games of, okay, yeah, we know what we're doing. Chip Kelly, veteran coach. UCLA fans might not be enamored with him right now. No reason for them to be at this point in time, given the results they've endured so far this season. But Arizona State had a lot less talent in that game across the board, and they went on the road and they won by 10. That shows you got a coach. You got a guy who knows what he's doing. Those are the only outright winners this week. Now, other teams are feeling good. This is a busy week for the lean win department. Yeah, busy week. This is, above average, feeling good, feeling solid, but not hurrah, yay, everything's great. How could it be better? 5 teams in the lean win department: Oregon, Washington, Arizona, Oregon State, and Colorado. Let's start with Oregon and Washington. They played kind of the same game. A good team, but not a great team. At home, favored by a lot. They win. They don't exactly play their best football. Washington gives up 28 points in the first half, none in the second, which made Husky fans feel better, but 28 points in the first half to Bryson Barnes in Utah. That's not good. Oregon only won the game 36-27. They had 120 penalty yards. That's more than Bucky Irving ran for. And that's not great either. And they had a couple breakdowns here and there. And look, both teams were a couple plays or a couple moments away from both losing the game and winning by a lot more. But right now, there is an element for both these teams as they go for the Pac-12 title and college football playoff spot of survive and advance. That's kind of where they're at. They both survived. They're both advancing to the next week in what is, basically a playoff every week. Washington's in a double elimination. Oregon already has that one loss to Washington, of course. So Oregon and Washington lean win, did not play their best games, were playing good teams, got wins, should be able to hold steady in the rankings come Tuesday night. So Arizona is also in the lean win department. And this is kind of kind of, not entirely, but like kind of like Arizona State's win, because it's reflective of where this Arizona football program is at this point in time, which is top 25, 7-3, in a good spot. Arizona has a better record than USC after week 11, just as we all predicted, right? Yeah, no, I don't think there are a lot of people that predicted that. If you did, good on you. But Arizona gets a lean win label. Why? Well, they did a lot of really good things, just like Jace Medical can do a lot of good things for you. So we spent a lot of time talking together, you and I. We get fired up on wins and losses and outcomes and results and coaching carousels, which we'll get to later, and everything like that. But you know what you have to be in today's world? Prepared at all times. You don't want to be caught unprepared, which is why you need to get yourself a Jace case. 5 life-saving antibiotics for emergency use. All it takes to get a Jace case is fill out a simple online form and, in some cases, jump on a quick call with one of their board-certified physicians. Get ongoing care from their physicians on any treatment-related questions. Doctor-created, doctor recommended. You don't want to be caught unprepared. Everyone should be empowered to care for themselves and their loved ones during the unexpected. Jace handles everything from online evaluation to licensed pharmacy, medication delivery, and ongoing consultation and care. If you or someone you love would get some peace of mind by having your supply of any daily med, go to jacemedical.com to see if it's offered for you. Remember to use promo code LOCKEDON for $20 off your purchase. That's jacemedical.com. Okay, lean win for Arizona, because when you're a good football team, which Arizona is, you find a way to win the game. I thought Arizona's point total would be about in the range that it was in. They scored a little bit more than I expected. I thought there'd be kind of a pullback element on the road. There was. It just came defensively, not offensively. It's why they were my only incorrect Pac-12 prime pick of the week. But hey, 4-1, can't complain. So when you're a good football team, you don't have to play your best to win. Did Arizona play its best? Absolutely not. But they won the game on the road, hostile environment, against a good quarterback. Arizona, a lean win. Colorado, also a lean win. Why? Because they were competitive against a good team. And Colorado has got 2 games left. Washington State and Utah have to win them both to make a bowl game. Washington State's lost 6 in a row. They could win that game. I don't think they will, but they could. And then Utah, look, hard to see them beating Utah, for sure. No doubt. But is it impossible to see them? No, I don't think so. Now Jonah Ellis is probably going to have like 5 sacks when they play, but if you can compete with Arizona, you can compete with Utah. Arizona-Utah is going to be an awesome game this week. So Colorado gets a lean win, though bowl eligibility after a 3-0 start is looking like it's kind of dire at the moment. Oregon State, also a lean win. Only reason this isn't an outright win is because A, GameDay snubbed them, and B, it's Stanford. Like against the Stanford, you can't get an outright win label against a Stanford, right? It's a no vibe or a lean win. And Oregon State trounced them. Better team, playing well. Going to be an awesome game in the game of the week in the Pac-12 this week. Washington at Oregon State. Should have college game day, but alas, here we are. No vibe this week. USC and Stanford. Stanford gets blown out on the road. And they're the worst team. Don't have enough talent. Research tough. No vibe for Stanford this week. And USC played a decent game, but they've lost 4 of 5. The defense played better, actually. They got off to a horrible start. They allowed Bo Nix's stat line to start the game, if you didn't know. This is a true story. 2 of 2 for 161 yards and 2 touchdowns. That was how Bo Nix began the game. But then USC's defense played a little bit better. If not for an offside, they would have had a 4th down stop on a quarterback sneak. They, got some stops here and there, held Oregon to a late field goal, like they were around in the game. But, I don't think USC has much of a vibe going into their last regular season game against UCLA. And I'm curious to see how that game plays out, to say the least. Nobody in the lean lose department, just 2 outright losers this week. Vibes not high. UCLA. Yikes. At home, I know that Colin Schley's a 3rd string quarterback. He was that for a reason. Showed why he was the 3rd string quarterback. Dante Moore or Ethan Garbers probably are able to win the game. But guess what? Arizona State's on a 3rd string quarterback who's a former walk-on. That's not great. That's not great. It is one of the worst losses for Chip Kelly this year and really in his tenure with UCLA. And I suspect they're going to let him oversee the transition going to the Big Ten. I don't think anyone wants to have a new coach as they go to a new conference, which we're going to get to the coaching carousel in a moment. But great performance from the good performance from the UCLA defense again, but the offense just isn't there, which is weird to say with a Chip Kelly team, but that's the reality of the situation. But that was a shocking loss. I didn't think it was likely Arizona State would win. To their credit, they showed up, and Kenny Dillingham, guy knows how to coach. He motivates his players. Those guys are playing super hard. I think they're a reflection of him every time they take the field, and that's a really good sign if you're a Sun Devil fan. And lastly, Washington State, 6 in a row. I'm not kidding. I don't have an example here. I don't know what to compare Washington State to. I don't know which team to compare them to. There are hot starts where a team peaks early, as Washington State did. They haven't won since Oregon State. That's the last time they won. In that time, Oregon State has climbed up to the top 12, maybe even higher in the rankings this week. And Washington State has lost 6 games in a row. They've lost it with bad defense. They've lost it with bad offense. They've lost it with bad execution one way or the other in critical moments. They're just down in a bad way right now. And they got a chance to win against Colorado, and then they could set up an Apple Cup fighting for bowl eligibility. Good luck beating the Huskies in Seattle. It's going to be pretty tough. Speaking of the Huskies, Texas A&M has fired Jimbo Fisher. Now, there are going to be, and have already been, lists that get generated because of this, where a list of coaching candidates for the Texas A&M job are going to arise. I expect within the next couple days, one of two things to happen. Either Washington fans are going to get really, really restless, or more likely, Washington's going to announce an extension and or probably a raise. I think there was a 1-year extension to his contract before the year, but a raise for Kalen DeBoer. He is currently making, I think, like $4-ish million right now. Let me see. He is making $4.2 million annually. In the grand scheme of things, and given where DeBoer has his football program and has for the last couple of years, that is too low. Dan Lanning, contrastly, who Kalen DeBoer is 2-0 against, and who he has his program operating at a same, or some would say a higher level, but those are the Pac-12's 2 college football playoff contenders right now. Lanning got a contract extension and a raise to $7 million. And Lanning is also going to be mentioned with the Texas A&M job because Lanning has ties to the SEC. I do not think it is likely that either of these coaches end up being the next head coach at Texas A&M. I think Lanning likes Oregon and has built something really good there. And also, Oregon can pay him what Texas A&M would be willing to pay him. I think Washington is going to find the money and pony it up for Kalen DeBoer. And he also is not a guy who has ties down south to the SEC. And Kalen DeBoer is not a big recruiter. In his 2 years at Washington, the recruiting classes have had good players. Sure, they've been fine classes, but he doesn't recruit the way that Dan Lanning does, which is something that is very important to SEC programs. So the lack of the tie of geographical ties or any historical ties to the school or even the conference, I think coincided with the lack of recruiting. I don't think Kalen DeBoer is going to end up being the target. I also don't think that either of those guys who are currently leading programs that are capable of winning the national championship and are going to be competing in the Big Ten, so they're not going to be worried about getting left behind financially or competitively in the landscape of college football, which, as we know, is ever changing. I don't see either of those guys in their second year at the helm jumping ship. I don't know what the upside is. Like Kalen DeBoer could maybe go get a raise, but for what? The pressure and the standards and the expectations and everything that goes on down there, I don't think Kalen DeBoer is an SEC kind of guy. I don't think that Dan Lanning is going to take the Texas A&M job. Obviously, he's an SEC kind of guy, but I think Lanning would only go back to the SEC for like an Alabama, a Georgia, maybe an LSU. I don't think he's leaving Oregon to go to Texas A&M, a place that has never accomplished something that both of those programs have before, and that's make a 4-team college football playoff. And Texas A&M isn't getting there anytime soon. I think the valuation of the Texas A&M coaching job is drastically overinflated. So that's the first thing. Here's the second thing to be aware of. And this applies not just to Oregon and Washington, but to every single school. Be on the lookout for the Boise State head coaching job, because I think the Broncos are going to come for a Pac-12 coordinator. I'm putting this on the record right here and now. My prediction is that Ryan Grubb, the Washington offensive coordinator, will be the next head coach at Boise State. He's been in the conference before at Fresno State with Kalen DeBoer. He's got a West Coast blueprint for his coaching, success and recruiting and whatnot. And he is also a hot commodity who has stated he wants to be a head coach. Boise State has moved on from former Oregon defense coordinator Andy Avalos. He was probably held on to for a season and a half too long, perhaps, because I remember Boise State as 10 wins is a down year. That's what it's supposed to be. That's what it's capable of being. And they're currently sitting at like 4-5 or 5-5. Sure, they have a chance to play for the conference championship, but they are not where they should be. I think Ryan Grubb, who I once upon a time had a conspiracy theory about going to San Diego State, that's when the Aztecs were going to join the Pac-12. I think that Ryan Grubb will be the next head coach at Boise State. You heard it here first, but do not be surprised, Pac-12 fans of any background here on this show, current Pac-12 schools, if you have a good team that people might want to get a piece of or a coordinator who's really good, do not be surprised if he suddenly pops up in the Boise State coaching sphere. I would watch for those two jobs to see what happens. I think that Boise State's more likely to go get a coordinator, and I don't think Texas A&M is likely to get anybody from the Pac-12. Appreciate everyone listening. I'll see you next time. And until then, hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.